Astra Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we talked about the beautiful and sad story of Dvalin. Like Venti, we're glad he's no longer in pain and is more himself, so hopefully this will make him ready for whatever the game has to throw his way. This week, we'll be discussing our newest station and talking about Sumeru so far. Additionally, I want to remind travelers to visit talesofteyvat.com to see visual representations of the lore mentioned during today's podcast. Your guides have put them together for you to make things a little easier to understand. Also, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Now, before we jump into the topic of the day, I have a question for all of my co-hosts.
Uh-oh.
You don't have to give a rhyme or a reason why, but who is your favorite Sumeru character and your least favorite Sumeru character? They could be playable, NPC, predicted to be playable, anything.
All right. I'm going to get some hate.
Oh, no.
Favorite, Alhaitham.
Okay.
Because, of course, who doesn't want to have their full mouth around those man titties? Least favorite, Tighnari.
I think Feens just fainted.
Yeah, she fainted.
Oh
I'm like, here's
Battle
the thing.
lines have been drawn.
Lines have been drawn.
I'm quitting now. Goodbye.
I can't get behind him. It was fun in his story quest for like a little bit, and then I'm like, I don't know what you're trying to do, motherfucker. You're
But
nice one
his
minute,
story
and then
quest
you're
was so
fucking ass
sad.
the next whole. I'm like, I'm tired of it. Pick one. At least Alhaitham is just like a smart asshole.
We'll talk about this later.
So I'm going to say my favorite is Nahida because she's just adorable and I love her. And my least favorite is probably, I mean, I don't hate any of them or anything, but I'd say my least favorite is probably Sino.
Another side. Okay.
You don't like Yu-Gi-Oh? How dare you? How dare.
I know, I don't know if you guys saw, but the voice actor of Sino was so excited because the one line he gets to do with the card game,
Let's duel. Let's duel!
it's a Yu-Gi-Oh line, and he said getting to say it felt like he was like fulfilling his life stream.
He
Wow.
fulfilled his full destiny right there.
Mine's pretty close to Bee's. Nahida's my favorite. Every time I see her, she just makes my heart smile. She's so freaking cute. I love everything about her. And her story is so beautiful and tragic. I think that adds to it. Sino was going to be my least favorite, and it's not his fault. It's his short's fault. I have such a problem with that voice, with the little boy body and the shorts. There's something that just drives me up a wall.
Mhm.
But I would say that probably my least favorite is an NPC that is in a meme that Feens sent me, where he looks like Steve from Stranger Things. He's just this little random dude with the sunglasses. It's so silly. It's so out of place.
I hate that he's your least favorite.
Yeah, because it's so out of place. He bugs me. But we'll add it to the site so you guys can see and you can see who he is. But I guess also my other favorite one is also the NPC that looks like you, Feens, just because it looks like you.
Yeah, there is an NPC that looks like me in Port Ormos. It's
What
really
are you talking about? That is you. That is you. That's you.
I would only dream that Hoyoverse would put me in their game.
I will say that I didn't include any of the academia jerks.
Ugh, the Grand Sage.
Yeah, because they were pretty awful.
Yeah. Oh, there are a lot of people to dislike. Yeah.
I just assume that's like what everyone's actual least favorite is.
It's
Well,
assumed
of
that
course
everyone
we
should hate the Grand Sage.
hate
Yeah.
him, but that's easy. That's easy, bees.
So I'll add mine in quickly, and then we'll actually jump into Sumeru and talk about these characters, and maybe that'll explain a little bit for each of us. But my favorite character is Tighnari. Al, I'm like flipping you off right now. It's fine.
You can flip me off all you want. Doesn't mean you're right. I am correct.
And my least favorite character, I'm gonna go with playable character, is Nilou. I love Nilou at the same time. Don't get me wrong. I think it's like Brandon said, like, it's not that I hate any of the characters, but there's just something about Nilou and her being a 5-star and like her getting as much attention as she did during the storyline.
You're just mad that it wasn't Tighnari that was in that centerfold. It was Nilou. You're just mad.
Of course, I think Tighnari should have been more involved, but I don't think that means that Nilou should have been less involved.
Well, he was busy getting struck by lightning.
Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
So let's go from there then.
Not at all like, something that happens to us every fucking time we step in Inazuma.
But us having it happen isn't canon.
All the cutscenes I've been blown to fucking bits.
We're also
by
like a
lightning.
god. We're like an angel or something. So it doesn't matter. He's not. He's a fox. Anyway, so let's backtrack a little bit. At the end of Inazuma, we are told by Yae Miko that we should travel to Sumeru. Which, first off, let's just talk about that. That's fucking annoying. Why did I travel all the way to Inazuma to go to the backyard of Mondstadt? Ugh. But whatever. So we go through the chasm and we emerge in Sumeru. What was your first thoughts when you saw Sumeru for the first time?
I want to say for the first 10 minutes, all they said was, "Oh my God, it's so pretty. Oh my God, it's so pretty. Look at the bird. It's so pretty."
Very lush. The music is great. It definitely felt like a new jungle type world.
Instant favorite. Better than all the other regions.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I remember being on Discord with Tiff and running up that hill by Kate Bush was running through my head as I ran up this hill to see Sumeru from afar. And I was like, whoa. And then I couldn't stop picking Sumeru roses because this is Lisa. Lisa's gonna need these. I don't know how, but Lisa needs these.
I think I also kept talking about how much I love the lush colors of the clothing and the cloth and their style and stuff like that. Not me just talking about fashion tonight. It's Sumeru so fashion. That's going to be the new subtitle.
Boot or two.
Yeah. They had I think that they did such a beautiful job with really bringing what the region is supposed to represent, kind of bringing that into the game and bringing in those beautiful colors and kind of giving us this, it really did seem like we went to this far off land, even though, like you said, we were in the backyard of Mondstadt.
Leeway. The backyard of Leeway, guys.
I mean, I feel like we're in the backyard of both.
It just sounds better, Mondstadt.
True. You're right.
Because the desert kind of goes up toward Mondstadt, Storm Terror and stuff. But it's a backyard of the nations we've already been to that we didn't have to cross a sea to get to. Freaking Zhongli. I feel like Zhongli just wanted to mess with us.
Duh.
He had that face on.
Why did he tell us to go to Inazuma?
I don't know.
Because he's a jerk.
Because he was like, you need to fix some shit down there. Things are just going awry.
Literally.
He was like, I don't have the time. But you know what you have? Time. And energy. And I'm old. And I don't. So go.
So we start venturing through this beautiful, lush forest. And in the game, the people of Sumeru do call it a forest. It's not like a jungle, it's a forest. Although it does seem very jungle-esque at times. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah,
there
that's
are
true.
Lions. I'm like, what is happening?
Exotic looking birds.
Yeah, there's a little toucan that's the first animal you see when you're there, and then the little boar with the mushrooms on its back, and I'm like,
oh, they're so cute.
Where am I?
Would it be very rainforesty though?
Yeah, rainforest is that's a good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm remembering correctly, we are traversing through the rainforest, and we run into Hypatia first.
Yes, and her crazy pot of tea.
Yeah, and she's like, I'm about to trip some balls. So you want in on
Fucking
this?
tripping for days.
This is the first sign that mushrooms and stuff like that was gonna be big in Sumeru.
It's great.
The fever dream keeps on coming.
So Hypatia, she lights some incense, and we're trying to tell her not, we're trying to give her food, I think, and she doesn't want to listen. She does her thing, and we do we touch her, or is that when we pass out?
I think we pass out just from the smell of the of her crazy
incense
thing, because we're very, as the game even goes on, we're still very sensitive to it, but we seem to get a little bit better with it. But at first, it just knocks us on our ass.
Yeah, we got fucking smoked out. She was smoking a weed, and we just got oofed.
We have that crazy dream or memory or whatever it ends up being, where we see the tree of Irminsul and we're running toward it, and then there's something else pops out and things start crumbling and it's all crazy. But of course, at that point, we know nothing about what we're seeing and what it has anything to do with anything. We just then wake up to a very saddened Paimon, a very worried Paimon.
Oh my god, she is so frantic.
Yeah, which is cute. You can tell like her little characters become like she's become our little friend. Like she's not just a little, emergency food anymore. She really is. She's become like a part, like we're like really a duo now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she cares.
She does.
And I think we see that quite a few times in Sumeru.
Mhm.
Now, quickly, before we jump into what happens after we calm Paimon down, I want to just lay down some vocab that might be important for some travelers to understand before we get any further into the lore of Sumeru. There are 4 gods/goddesses of Sumeru that we can just give like quick one-liners about, just so you guys have an idea. We'll probably jump into more of their lore later, but the 4 gods you really need to know about are Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, Lesser Lord Kusanali, the Goddess of Flowers, and King Deshret.
AKA the Scarlet King.
Yes. So Greater Lord Rukkhadevata was the original god of wisdom. She was around until the cataclysm when something unknown at the time happened to her and she died. The people of Sumeru are very split right now, and a lot of them choose to still pray to Greater Lord Rukkhadevata instead of their new god, Lesser Lord Kusanali, who the sages of the academia, which we'll talk about them later, found her outside of the cataclysm 500 years ago, and they have since locked her away because she is not a full god yet and should not be seen by the people. And then we have the Goddess of Flowers, which I know a little less about. I know, Brandon, you were like...
She's less prominent in the story than the other 3, but basically she is a very ancient god that back, thousands of years ago, we're talking either around the time of the Archon War but even before it, she was sort of one of the 3 rulers of Sumeru alongside Greater Lord Rukkhadevata and King Deshret.
King Deshret / the Scarlet King is a god from the desert area of Sumeru, which is the second area we later unlock. And there are a lot of people in Sumeru who think that the Scarlet King was screwed over, basically, by Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, and they still worship the Scarlet King, and they say that the Scarlet King is going to come back. So there's a lot of tensions in Sumeru when it comes to what god to worship and what god they really look to for advice.
Right, you have the academia worshiping Greater Lord Rukkhadevata in the foresty area of Sumeru, and then you have the Eremites and all of the desert people that are really gung-ho about worshiping King Deshret and are actually, we find out, trying to, or at least there's rumors being created that they're going to try to bring him back somehow.
Right. And then there's a sprinkle here and there of people who actually pray to Lord Kusanali instead. We do meet a few of them in game, and even some of our other characters who have voice lines about Kusanali, they're kind of like, I've heard stories about them and she's our god, but I don't really know if I should pray to them. There's a weird middle ground about Kusanali in the land. But back to Paimon crying.
I wanted to draw like a comparison between these 4 different gods into kind of many of the different pantheons of mythology, and how it directly correlates to how, like, specifically in Greek mythology, you had, to use a term, the cult of said god. So you had the cult of Apollo, you had the cult of Aphrodite, you had the cult of Zeus. They were all a part of the same regional mythology, but you worship them for different things. It seems to parallel everyone in Sumeru, where those who worship the goddess of flowers definitely take more aspect into fertility and in life and joy, while those who are trying to continuously worship Greater Lord Rukkhadevata are all about knowledge and wisdom and gaining knowledge and power, and vice versa for all these other gods. So you can kind of take it as like, it's not that they don't respect Lesser Lord Kusanali, they just haven't, I guess, realized, oh, this god is not just about knowledge, it's far more than that.
That's very
right
true.
And they don't really get an opportunity to get to know her because she's so limited, because we discover that she's that the narrative is being controlled by the academia, who has deemed her not good enough.
Yeah, because they're so obsessed with Greater Lord Rukkhadevata that they can't see.
Right.
They even named Kusanali, Lesser Lord Kusanali. So there's already in the title an indication that this god is less than what we worship.
Right.
And it makes me very angry. Because poor Lesser Lord Kusanali. Like, fuck, man.
And we definitely learn later on that Kusanali has a bit of a she has some trauma around that and some, issues because of that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, gods aside, we haven't really learned a lot about the gods yet at this point in the storyline. We wake up, Paimon's all upset, and we have made it to Gandharvaville, where we meet Tighnari, and we are officially finally introduced to Kale, which was so exciting. I was like, this is my baby. I've been waiting to meet you for so long.
I know. It's like baby Kale from the manga, which we talked a lot about her in our Kale episode.
Yeah, I hope we talked a lot about her in that episode.
Yeah.
So Tighnari basically explains to us that whatever the incent was really knocked us out, and he recommends that we are careful moving forward because it seems we might have some weak sense, some sense issues. And we asked them a little bit about what's going on and how we can get to Sumeru City. And we learn at that point about Elazar as well, when Paimon goes to touch Kale at one point and she freaks out. Kale kind of disappears, and the next day we don't see her, and we find Tighnari, and Tighnari's like, oh, Kale's not feeling well today. And at first we're like, Paimon, what did you do? But then Tighnari starts to describe that she's sick with Elazar, which is something we knew from the manga. But for those of you who don't know, Elazar is a disease that is only in Sumeru. Or I should say it only affects people from Sumeru, because Kale was in Mondstadt with it, technically.
Elazar is a disease that affects the people from Sumeru. It basically creates gray scales on the body. It ends up paralyzing limbs and making people unable to move, and it does other nasty, painful things to them. And it's caused by something called forbidden knowledge. And again, we go a little bit deeper into this in our Kale episode, which we put out earlier in the Sumeru releases. But we do encourage you to go back if you haven't and listen to that episode, because we do talk a lot about Elazar and sort of theorize about it. I don't know how much about the forbidden knowledge we knew at that point, but we definitely know a lot more about it now, although it's still kind of mysterious. But this forbidden knowledge was brought into the world by King Deshret, and it caused, among other things, this disease called Elazar.
Kale, she has Elazar, and we learn a lot about it just from this one interaction with her. And we learned that it can really exhaust her, that she sometimes can't do a lot. She has very shaky hands because of it. And that's part of the reason why Kale has hand coverings on.
Right.
So it really is sad. There's really no cure for it that they know of, though a lot of people talk about trying to find cures for it. I think even Tighnari mentions searching for a cure at one point. So Tighnari and Kale send us into Sumeru City, where we run into someone who is even more sick with Elazar, Dunyarzad, and we learn a little bit about her and how at a young age she was very sickly. They thought she was going to die, and she saw Lesser Lord Kusanali come to her in her sleep and help her, which is very confusing to us because as far as we're concerned, Lesser Lord Kusanali's in a birdcage somewhere.
Which I don't think we know that at the time that we meet Dunyarzad, but yeah, she is in her little.
But we do know it from the little preview that gets shown probably right before we all get to this point in the story that Genshin put out of I woke up and it was my birthday, and we just see that over and over again.
Oh my god, that was the saddest fucking short.
It was so sad
because they released it on Nahida's birthday.
Yeah.
I was I remember sitting there with my head in my hands being like, oh my god, what is this?
What are they doing to this little baby?
I'm like, this is a child.
A 500-year-old child in a birdcage.
Well, she's still a baby because she's a god.
I think they released that later, though. I think, didn't that come out right before she became playable?
Yeah, it came out right before the second part of the Archon quest, they think.
It may have maybe it just coincided when that was all I was doing that part of the quests and stuff too.
It hit you in the heart.
Yeah, it really
couldn't let go of it. All right. So in Sumeru City, we learned a little bit more about Dunyarzad, but I think there are two more little pieces of information we need to add to our repertoire here before we jump any further into Sumeru, because they become very important pieces in Sumeru City.
Mhm.
One, we have our Akasha terminals. You may have noticed if you're in Sumeru, you may not have noticed if you're not in Sumeru. You might have seen the previews, but everyone in Sumeru has a little thingamabob on their ear, except for the people outside the city, because it doesn't stretch that far. But the Akasha terminal is basically a thing that goes around their ear and is able to give them easy access to information from Irminsul.
Think the cloud.
Yeah, it's like the cloud.
It's the cloud, but in your ear. Remember when Google put out the Google glasses?
Oh my god, yeah.
It's like that, but in your ear forever. It'll fuck you up, and it controls what you know, and it knows you and your clearance, so it won't give you information even if you're asking for it.
Yeah, everyone has certain levels that they're allowed to access in there. So people who are higher up in the academia have access to more knowledge. Smaller people have access to less knowledge. And it also monitors you in anticipation of guessing what you're going to do next, which is a little creepy.
It's like, yeah, it has its own algorithm attached to it.
His little matrix.
It's very odd. It's so cool, though. And we actually are given one as well as soon as we enter Sumeru City. And the other thing that's really important is there's something called canned knowledge, which is different than forbidden knowledge, though it could be similar at the same time. And basically, canned knowledge are these little cute, like acorn-shaped things.
They're like the little, acorn-shaped USB like flash drives
for your Akasha terminal, for your Google connected AirPod. Like, and so people who you just have to touch it really. Oh, open it. You have to open the canned knowledge, and you all of a sudden have.
You connect to it via Bluetooth, right?
Yes, via Bluetooth. Beep boop bop. Catherine knows all about that, and. You get access to that. And the first time we see that is later on with Al Haitham, where he shows us a canned knowledge. I think there are a few options you could pick, and the one I picked was about like better swordsmanship skills.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Sumeru City, what were your first impressions of this? It's not a city like the other cities, but it is a city.
I love that there's technology there that isn't in the other cities, because it is supposed to be the Archon of Wisdom realm. So I thought that was exciting that, we're getting to see this new technology and like what that's going to do to the storyline. But then it's such a cool mixture of that meeting the visual of Sumeru City, which is just so, it's a giant tree. It feels so sort of like rustic, but also kind of fantasy-like. So the blend of that with like the focus on academics and technology was really interesting to me.
You want to know what one of my first thoughts were about Sumeru City? And this might sound a little like far-fetched, but it made me realize that every major city in the nations we've seen so far have all had an incline to them to get to the more important places. So like in Mondstadt, we have to go up the stairs to the cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
And in Leeway, we have to go up to that little area where they do like the ceremony to say goodbye to Rex Lapis. Like all of that is on an incline. And then in Azuma, I don't remember what it's called, but the manor where A lives or A stays, as well as the shrine and that manor house are both also up on hills, and you have to like climb to get there. And I don't know. It almost feels like the more important things are closer to Celestia.
Yeah, I think you could probably say the same thing for most cities in the real world as well.
No, Manhattan's like underwater, technically.
That doesn't mean it was always underwater. Usually when you look at European, Middle Eastern, and even in the entirety of Asia, majority of large, powerful structures are built on top of a hill because one, vantage points.
That's true.
Or if you're in a more Christian or Islamic faith, you're wanting to be as close to Yahweh, Allah, and God as possible. So usually your churches or your temples or your mosques are going to be at the highest point so that you can better, quote unquote, hear God.
Oh, closer to God, you say? Closer to Celestia?
Yeah, and I think we see it all the time within the game where they kind of bring those familiarities into it. And I think that is one of the things that you're picking up on there. I think is totally right. Like, I think that was the almost like the intent of building these cities to kind of emulate what we see in some of, especially older nations, older than ours.
You mean Manhattan's not an old nation?
No, I mean, the
No.
United States ain't really all that old, really. But like, you think about like the Parthenon or even like Sacre-Cœur in Paris, like they're in these like large, high areas.
Hold up, I have some history for that because Cahokia and Chaco Canyon, which are some of the oldest man-made constructions, Chaco being kind of a holy place of ritual and pilgrimage in Southwest America about 8,000 years ago. Everything also higher. Same with Cahokia, which is where our friend lives, and they made giant earth mounds, some of the largest this side of the hemisphere out of earth. And basically, they're giant pyramids of dirt where they would set homes and their temples and their kivas.
That's all really interesting, honestly, what you guys have said about the high ground and stuff. And I'm thinking about like Fortnite. When I think of high ground, I'm like, yeah, I like the high ground. Even in Wind Trace, I like the high ground.
Don't think of the prequels, the Star Wars prequels.
No, I didn't actually, which is sad because I love Star Wars.
I have the high ground, Anakin.
No, my allegiance is democracy. Anyway, that's D, Luke, and Kaya basically every day. While one of them is like at the top of the stairs in the front of Mondstadt and the other's at the bottom.
Which one is the fascist and which one's the Democrat?
It depends on the day.
That's true.
But yeah, back to Sumeru City. So I cannot remember if we hang out and figure out stuff with Dunyarzad first, or if we go to Port Ormos, which is like a little further south of Sumeru City. I would say that Gandharvaville is kind of somewhere in the middle of the two, and that's their major trading area. But do we do Dunyarzad first, or do we go down to Port Ormos and run into Al Haytham first?
I think we meet Dunyarzad, but like just briefly, and then we go to Port Ormos and meet Al Haytham, and then we end up going back and doing like the next part of it.
Because we go to Port Ormos looking for like an artifact of sorts, right? Which we later find out is a canned knowledge that has gone missing.
Right.
Which is how we find out how the Akasha system can get corrupted.
Oh my god, yeah. So when we're in Port Ormos, guys, we run into Al Haytham and we're talking with him. I almost forgot about this scene. I don't know how you forget about it.
It's a hot fucking scene, and there's also a very important line said at the end of this cutscene.
So we fight the Emirates, and they're also looking for this canned knowledge, and they take it and they open it, and the guy's Akasha terminal goes from green to red. And I'm like, oh shit, that can't be good. And he literally has like a full breakdown and starts attacking us, and Al Haytham fights him very gracefully. Like, what a graceful fighter that guy is.
Yeah, and he smashes his Akasha terminal, which gets him to stop.
Yes.
But do you remember what he says after the Akasha terminal is destroyed?
No.
He says, "World, forget me," which is
something we hear throughout all the regions when we go to specific statues.
And we actually first hear it when we run into Hypatia and smell the incense and pass out and see Irminsul. I believe that's the first time we actually hear it. And we have no idea what it means, and we still don't at this point. But we eventually find out what it means.
So after this whole thing, we're kind of like, Al Haytham, we have an eye on you, but thank you. We're going back to Sumeru City now. We go back to Sumeru City, where we run into Deha with Dunyarzad. Deha is kind of like her bodyguard of sorts. She's paid help by Dunyarzad's parents.
And is madly in love with her.
Madly in love, absolutely.
Oh, I mean, yes, until she meets a certain Hydro polearm user. Thank you.
Yeah, there is definitely
polearm user?
Candace, like some Candace
Candace polearm, right?
I was thinking of Nilu.
No. It's all about Candace and Dunyarzad. But I feel like at the end of the day, like when you get to the very end of this whole quest chain, I think it's clear that she's way more in love with Dunyarzad. But I think she should be shipped with both.
You know what? They're just a throuple. They're all wives together.
Yeah, they could be a throuple.
Or like, Deha has a desert wife and a Sumeru City wife. It's totally fine.
There you go.
I like that. They know about each other.
Like here's my forest wife and here's my desert wife.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
And then all we see in the next scene is Candace singing the fucking "She Had It Coming" song
Oh no.
from Chicago.
Nahida would have to step in and save Junior Zod from Candace.
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Candace would not blame Dunyazard. It would just be Data.
That's true. There'd be a lot of justice. And then Saito has to step in and he like gets his little like ethics scale out. He's like,
He would arrest Candace. Come on.
And Tighnari just like is like head in hand, like, Jesus Christ, what is happening? And Nilu's dancing in the background. So
just dancing
again. Beautifully, nonetheless. But what happens when we go back to Sumeru City at that point?
I'm gonna butcher it. I'm gonna absolutely. It's Gandharva Day.
Oh, is it? I don't remember what Gandharva Day is.
We come back and there's the festival.
No, the Sub-Zeru's festival.
Oh, that's what it is. I don't know what the fuck.
I was like,
There are a lot of festivals back to back.
Margaritaville?
Margaritaville, exactly. It's, we can go.
They go back to Sumeru City and there's something starting there called the Sub-Zeru's Festival. And this is the beginning of the Groundhog's Day storyline in Sumeru.
Yes, we are the Bill Murray.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we basically just have to relive the same dream over and over and over. And then throughout that process, eventually the traveler starts getting concerned that something is afoot because he or she starts remembering certain little things and having deja vu, and then starts seeing little visions of Nahida running around. And once Nahida realizes that he or she can see her, she starts sort of telling us what's going on, but also annoyingly makes us try to like figure it out ourselves.
And isn't that like the most like Children of the Corn thing ever too? Like Nahida, like we just see this little kid running around, and we've honestly heard her voice already in this year's summer event. So I think it's very interesting that we're like, oh wait, we've heard this voice before. Oh, what is this kid doing here? We're like, ugh. I was concerned. Kids scare me a little bit.
Yeah,
have you met Klee? A lot of the kids in this game are scary. We got little terrorist Klee. We got alcohol terrorist Diona. We got a zombie. Like, come on, guys.
Rah, I'm a zombie.
Did you say Rue?
Rue.
Stop.
It wasn't me this time. It wasn't me.
He's not a zombie. He's a phantom. Thank you very much. His cousin name is Danny.
He's
Danny
a dead
Phantom?
Not Danny Phantom. No. So we're in this Dream Lake stance, and eventually Nahida is like, you have to figure it out yourself. And we get this weird, like, actionable thing now where we like can make decisions. I hated that. I was like,
like the
"Ah."
choose your own adventure type.
I was like, it's 2 in the morning. I don't have the attention span for this. But eventually we do break free of this dream loop that we're in, and we learn that the academia put everyone in Sumeru City in this dream loop, and that they did it using the Akasha terminals, and we could hear a beep at the end of the night each night that was resetting the dream.
Mhm.
And the only way we can get out of this dream is to find the person that they made this dream about. The person who they have planted this dream in their head. And we find out it's Nilu. I forget how we figure that shit out, but we realize that Nilu is the one dreaming over and over again, and we have to go convince Nilu basically that she's dreaming and wake her up.
Right.
Which was wild. Like, what the hell is happening?
And this whole time, Dunyarzad is dying very quickly.
Nilu, wake up!
No, yeah, basically, yes. So yeah, and we think that Dunyarzad is dead at this point. We think, to backtrack a little bit, during this dream, every time we run into Dunyarzad, she is worse and worse and worse. And we realize that the dream loop is taking a toll on her body because of how developed her Elazar is.
She technically does die, though, and it's just one of the other instances that's brought back.
Really? I thought that she just didn't die.
Well, in a way, technically, she's still alive, but she technically did die at one point.
Is it like she went brain dead?
Yeah, it's more like that, like full brain dead, and somehow we cured brain. we got her back from that
somehow
state.
Nahida was able to
it was all
to
Nahida.
go back. Yeah.
Nahida's
like just constantly jumping around into like this consciousness in this realm of consciousness or this memory or this dream. It's so confusing. That's my one big complaint about Sumeru, is that some of the storyline is very confusing and seems a little convenient.
It is too convenient. Let someone die permanently. I love Tepe. I miss Tepe. We should have had a Tepe moment with Dunyazard.
Well, we almost did have a Tepe moment with her, though. Like, the Traveler was like, she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been so good if she was dead, though.
And then when we see her at the festival the last time, when Nilou does her dance prior to waking up, like that's when we're like, oh my god, she might still be alive. Thank fucking god.
Yeah.
Don't stash my trauma away from me. Let me be traumatized.
But I do think, Brandon, you're right. It is very confusing because it's like Nahida can jump from all these consciousness and she could heal people and she could do this and she could do that, but then she can't escape where she's stuck.
Right. Like, why couldn't she just like possess someone with an Akasha terminal and have them break her out?
Yeah, it's very confusing. So that's when we find out that Nahida is locked away. And in this dream loop, we can actually like see Nahida face to face. But once we're out of the dream loop, we actually only see Nahida when she's taking over people's bodies and primarily taking over the body of Catherine, which is where she openly admits that Catherine is a Shneznayan puppet.
Right. And I do appreciate that she has a set of ethics where she like tries to only possess a robot.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, I don't want to mess with real people.
Right.
And change up like what they're doing. Like she kind of says like, if I have to, I will. And I think we see a few times when she's got to like sneak on in there, but she's kind of like, yeah, this bitch ain't real. So I'm just going to jump on in here.
Like, we don't give a fuck. AI being sentient.
But that was really cool that we finally got that confirmation that, you know, which everyone already suspected, the Catherines are robots.
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things with Nahida, and we learn this more and more as we dive into the storyline, is that it does not seem like Nahida is bound by the same contracts of the Archons we have run into prior. I would assume that Greater Lord Rukkhadevata was bound by said contracts, but since Rukkhadevata died and Kusanali was immediately put into this chamber, no one could ever come to her to sign a contract.
Exactly. Like, Celestia would not have the time.
Well, but what contracts are you talking about?
So when we talk to like Venti, Zhongli, they all say that they are not able to talk about certain things. And I believe Zhongli specifically insinuates, I think it's one of them specifically insinuates that they have signed a contract that they cannot talk about certain things.
That's Zhongli.
I never thought it was a contract. I thought they like were in danger if they did. Like I thought they were either like physically withheld from doing it by some power, or that if they did it, something really bad would happen to them.
I feel like that could constitute as a contract.
Maybe.
I always, for some reason, just assumed that Zhongli had been forced to create a contract with them all.
Oh, yeah, maybe he did.
It could be a rule specifically with the Archons with Celestia.
Yeah, I guess my and this could be just an Amanda headcanon, which we all know there's way too many of them. But I had always imagined that like Celestia and the 7 Archons, I don't know where I got 8 from, where the 7 Archons all kind of sat down with Celestia and signed some sort of like binding contract that also included information about our sibling, which would include like the Cataclysm. And since Kusanali, who, in case we haven't said it, just so everyone knows, Kusanali and Nahida are the same person. It's like there's Venti Barbados, Zhongli Morax, and Ball. So they're all the same person. Well, those are their alter egos, I guess. So I always assumed that since Nahida was found right after the Cataclysm by the sages.
Wait, hold up. No. Lesser Lord Kusanali, Nahida is only 400 years old. So Greater Lord Rukkhadevata didn't die until 100 years after the Cataclysm.
No.
Yes.
Nahida's 500 years old.
No, she's 400.
No.
Where are you seeing 400?
this is spoilers, when she meets herself.
No, she says in that scene, you must be about 500 years old.
Yeah. Ruka Devata says that to Nahida.
Okay, but she dies after the cataclysm happens.
So, okay, so here's what I interpreted from it. So Nahida follows these clues and does her convenient, weird, like, let's go into the memory of this realm of someone's consciousness, whatever. And then they find this memory of Irminsul and Ruka Devata. But my interpretation was that this memory was from 500 years ago, right around the time of the cataclysm. And that's when she snipped off the branch of the Irminsul tree and created Nahida. But that we're sort of doing a timey-wimey thing where we're like almost going back in time to this old memory. And then when she erases her from Irminsul, that it sort of backdates it to the beginning of Teyvat.
I had interpreted it as Greater Lord Ruka Devata implementing that final memory before she alt-deleted, and that memory was reawakened once we were able to unlock them.
Once we had the power of the two gnosis.
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
It is, yeah. It's a bit too convoluted. We'd have to go back, I think, a couple more times. I'm confusing us all. Anyway.
No, you're okay. My assumption had always been that at the same time as the cataclysm, Greater Lord Ruka Devata went to get rid of the forbidden knowledge because it was infecting Irminsul. So,
Yes.
Some people think that, the forbidden knowledge could have been part of the reason the cataclysm happened. God, what the fuck was Gold doing?
Well, so there's a different thing, though. So back in the day, many, 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 many years ago, when it was Ruka Devata, King Deshret, and the Goddess of Flowers hanging out together. And then this whole thing happened with the forbidden knowledge. King Deshret brought forbidden knowledge into the world. And Greater Lord Ruka Devata had to use all of her power, and that's actually when she created the Akasha system, so she could absorb all of the wisdom from all of her people, and she used that in combination with her own power to get rid of almost all of the forbidden knowledge in the world. And so then, many years pass as that forbidden knowledge, since there was still just a little bit of it left, it's sort of slowly creeping back in. And in the meantime, she's aware of it because she can sense that there's still a little bit of the corruption left inside of her, since she is basically the avatar of Irminsul, so she can feel the things in it. And so she knows that there's really not, even if she died, her memories are going to be cycled back through the Irminsul, which means the pollution will still be there even if she's gone. And so she already knows this. And then the cataclysm happens 500 years ago, and that triggers, like, that coincides with a new plague of forbidden knowledge coming into the world. When the cataclysm is happening, all the 7 archons are actually summoned to Conria, but she's the only one out of the rest of them that doesn't go to Conria. She goes to Irminsul to protect it. Mm-hmm. And it's while she's there that she realizes how corrupted Irminsul already is from the cataclysm. And so that's when she snips the branch to create Nahida and figures out how to leave some clues to get Nahida to erase her and her corruption from Irminsul forever.
Yeah, so Ruka Devata 500 years ago sets a plan into action that she needs Nahida to come back to Irminsul and make it so that no one remembers Ruka Devata in the end, including Nahida, which for Nahida was like so emotional. It was a very tearjerker moment.
Yeah, it was so, like, that broke my heart. And even anytime it came up afterwards when Travelers kind of like, oh, wait a second, that's right, they don't know what I know. Like, do I tell them? It kind of almost like opens up that wound again of, they've forgotten for a good reason, but they've forgotten this beautiful story.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Tiff, too, is that Traveler still remembers. And this is a reminder to players that Traveler's not of this world. And because Traveler is not of this world, the memories of Irminsul do not affect the Traveler. But it does affect Paimon, which I think is important. And it also changes some of the voice lines of characters as well. And it's really interesting. Like, I think like it's Venti and Zhongli and A all have voice lines about the Sumeru god that change, which is cray. And I'm pretty sure people say that some of our books change too, like any books that refer to Rukkhadevata no longer do. I have to give so much props to the developers. I cannot imagine how much time that took.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they must have had like a freaking Excel spreadsheet that was like 9,000 tabs long of every time Rukkhadevata was mentioned, so they could go and just alt delete and like
replace. And she basically gets replaced with Kusanali in every instance.
Which must be also interesting for Nahida, because now Nahida's like, I've been around for thousands of years, even though I'm 500 years old in the body of an 8-year-old.
Right.
But we did skip pretty far ahead. I want to take a step back. What we just talked about is what happens once we actually free Nahida from the constrides of her birdcage. But we have to do that first. So after we figure out this whole dream loop thing, we actually run into Dotere. And we have this very dramatic moment where Catherine / Nahida gets stabbed, and all these like people of Sumeru City are kind of like chasing after us, and we run away. And I believe we run away to the desert at this point. And once we're out in the desert, we meet up again with Al-Haytham, Deha. We meet Sino for the first time, and there is a badass fight scene between Sino and Al-Haytham. I like the fact that immediately they just hate each other, but I also feel like they were very bro, like, hey bro, I'm gonna fight you, bro. And then there's like me as Traveler going, yeah, this is hot.
It definitely feels like they're like swinging their dicks around in an annoying way.
Yeah. So we end up working with them as well as Candace and an emirate called Ramen to divert a plan to free Nahida. And it's, I think, a 3 or 4 step plan. Step 1 is that Sino, Ramen, and Deha work together to get Rahman, who is an emirate that Deha knows personally, and his other emirates to get arrested. And Sino makes sure that they will be in Sumeru City when they are needed. Then we are sent with Deha to Gandharvaville to find Tighnari and ask for his help. I forget exactly what we need help with. At this point, we go to I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so please let us know if I'm pronouncing it correct or not. I'm sure I'm not. But we go to Paradis DI, where Tighnari is actually taking care of Hypatia. And when we get there, we find out that Tighnari has already been visited by Dotere, who has requested to have Hypatia like all to himself. And also while there, Tighnari basically tells Dotere to fuck off, which applause. I think all of us have been wanting to tell Dotere to fuck off since the manga. So that happens. And then the Fatui attack. While the Fatui are attacking, we actually go to Hypatia to protect her. And we end up connecting with Scaramouche.
Right. And just to remind everyone what's going on with Hypatia, because I don't think we've followed through on that. Doesn't she end up in a coma, basically?
Yeah, from the incense that also like made us sick. Not from the incense, but like from the incident where we got sick from the incense.
Right. So she's in a coma, and I don't remember why they're after her.
I think they're after her because she's like the first person to actually make contact with Irminsul through what she was doing. And she technically also made contact with Skara. So we learned that Scaramouche, for those of you who don't remember, Scaramouche is the puppet created by A that she kind of discarded, and he's been causing us trouble ever since. And he has the electronosis with him. So this is when we actually see him in like this cool ghosty form, and it's like all black and white, and he's kind of taunting us, and he lets us know that they're trying to make him into a god. Ugh.
The one person you don't want to have god powers in this game.
No, he's such an asshole.
And we'll do a much deeper dive into Scaramouche in episode 19.
Yes, at the end of the season, we're doing 20 episodes this season, so Skara's gonna be toward the end, so we give you guys some time to catch up on some newer Archon quests that we aren't going to cover in today's episode. Also during this time, Tighnari gets struck by lightning, and it made me really sad, but that's it. We won't say much more, because I could go on about that for a very long time.
It was very upsetting for her.
I was so annoyed. I'm not annoyed that he got struck by lightning, but like annoyed by how it happened. If you believe in me, or if you are with me, let me know.
Look, anything that happens off screen It's too Shakespearean. I want to see it.
Yeah, exactly, Al. Exactly. It could have been such a cool animated scene. Anyway, so we actually find out at this point that Sino had been keeping himself out of the academia, and he'd actually like shunned himself. And that's why we ran into him in the desert. And we find out that it's kind of Tighnari's fault, because the academia, I don't think I was going to jump into this earlier. We didn't get a chance. The academia is divided up into 7 schools. They're also called darshans. So there's 7 darshans, 7 schools of study. You know, if you went to an arts and humanities school, you get it. You have the Scarlet School of Arts and Humanities, the School of Nursing, Health, and Wellness, the School of STEM, blah, blah, blah. So the headmaster of the darshan that Tighnari graduated from has kind of gone MIA, and Tighnari was really worried about him. And he asked Sino to like take a peek and look into what the academia was doing. That I thought was a really interesting tidbit of information, that Sino ends up, you know, banishing himself from the academia because of what he finds out, which I don't remember what he even finds out. He just leaves. Anyway, we finish up this whole thing with Tighnari. We report back to Sino and Al-Haytham and Candace. And now we enter the final stage of our mission, which is going to Sumeru City and actually freeing Nahida. And I don't remember 100%. I know I'm also trying to speed through it, but Al-Haytham put on a great show for us.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 would still fuck Dark Al-Haytham.
So he basically uses a custom knowledge capsule and switches it out with, I guess, one that's going to be used for the guards.
Mhm.
Is that what happened? And it like implanted like the wrong thing that they were going to be told. So they were given orders to do one thing, but then they thought they were told to do another.
It was almost like a little Trojan horse that they like implanted in their technology.
Yeah, they thought the canned knowledge was going to tell them something crazy that it didn't. And it changed the one coding. They convinced everyone that Nahida got out.
Right.
And Isaac, who's this little kid we meet in the desert and we help, is actually dressed as Nahida.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Yes, it was.
We get to play as him too for a few minutes. So,
Like a little
around.
kid in drag running around.
But in reality, it was supposed to be something about like dancing, because Nilu is like out dancing. Oh, they were going to outlaw dance and art, and basically like public dance and public art. And Nilu is dancing in front of the academia, distracting the guards. So they try to pull that code, but then the code goes off that Nahida ran away. And that gives Traveler enough time to go and actually free Nahida, which we learn that because of our previous connections, we are able to actually access Nahida's like subconscious.
Which makes no sense, but okay.
No sense. But it's kind of similar to how we could access Scaramouche's subconscious at the same time. And then we have that whole scene we talked about earlier with Irminsul, and we learn a little bit about, you know, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata. So we already talked about that, so I'm going to skip over it. Sorry. And that leads us to our big boss fight, where we finally go and fight God Scaramouche.
And we can get into that in episode 19, but basically Nahida helps us defeat him and rips out his electro-gnosis, which was so devastating for him. And I know all the Skara fans were like very upset by it. Then uses the power of having that gnosis on top of the dendrognosis to access the final memory left behind by Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, which is when we discover, you know, what happened with how Nahida was created.
We're going to not talk too much about what happens after this, except that afterwards, we are talking with Nahida after we've learned the truth. We realize that Nahida doesn't remember who Greater Lord Rukkhadevata is, and Dodoray comes back. And Nahida and Dodoray make a deal that Dodoray can have the electro-gnosis, or is it the dendrognosis?
Wasn't it both of them?
Or was it both of them? Jesus Christ. Nahida makes a deal to give all these gnosis to Dodoray, who is one of the Fatui Harbingers. I'm sorry if we didn't say that earlier. As long as he deletes all the copies of himself that he's made. And for travelers who don't know a lot about Dodoray, Dodoray is a harbinger who was around during the Cataclysm. He is also known as the Doctor amongst the Harbingers. And he, over the years, has made like versions of himself that kind of like you don't know which Dodoray you're talking to.
Yeah, he's somehow able to split himself into all these different versions of himself that are scattered across different timelines.
Maybe become so matrixy.
Yeah. She uses the leverage that she has to say, get rid of all of your copies. And then in addition, I think that was for one of the Gnosis, and then the other one she gave over because he offered her some knowledge on the truth of this world, which is when we find out about the Descenders.
Oh my god, the Descenders. I think the Descenders is going to have to be the last thing we talk about today, but we definitely need to talk about it. And obviously for, our travelers listening, we will talk more about Sumeru in a future episode again. There's just too much to cover in one episode. But Brandon, tell us what the hell the Descenders are.
Oh God, I don't even know if I know. We just know that the Descenders are beings or entities not from this world, right? We know that the Traveler is the fourth Descender, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles was likely the first, but we don't know who the second and third ones are. But what we also find out, according to what Nahida found out from Dottore, is that our twin was apparently not a Descender, because there is information on our twin in Irminsul, which indicates that our twin was from Teyvat or originates in Teyvat somehow. And that we also find out the first record of our twin showing up in the memories of the world are around the time of the Cataclysm.
And this is the biggest dun-dun-dun, like, of the whole thing. I felt like I had to rewatch it because I was like, did that just happen? Like,
right.
It's not our twin?
Because, like, here's the confusing part, right? Is like, if it's our twin, how did they show up during the Cataclysm and we're a Descender? And then also, they showed up in the fucking Cataclysm as, like, I don't know, a 20-year-old? Like, looking like a 20-year-old? Like,
how do we know that this isn't, like, in the situation of Dottore, a copy of us? Because if they are of Teyvat, we could possibly be even older, to the point that we are before the knowledge of Irminsul.
Yeah, I mean, spawning all kinds of theories, because if we're twins, how could we not be from the same world? Also, the opening cutscene, we all know shows like two stars coming to Teyvat together. We know that at some point we were fighting the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles together, who is also, by the way, mentioned or used by Nahida as a threat to Dottore, where she basically says, how about I just, alert the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles to come down here and right now, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, how about I get mom down here to tell you to cut the shit?
And it works. Dottore is kind of like, oh shit, even though Nahida was, I think, sort of bluffing in a way. But yeah, there's all kinds of theories now about, like, what's a Descender, who's a Descender, who could be numbers 2 and 3. Are there more than 4? Is Dainsleif a Descender? Is Alice a Descender? Is, there's all kinds of theories.
And there's also the thought of, like, was Irminsul changed at some point as well to possibly remove our sibling as a Descender from the books?
Right.
We don't know. And no one else would know, apparently, either. Although there is a lot of alluding, I should say, that a lot of these books we read might actually, like, we've read across Teyvat, could actually be clues to past things that have been removed from Irminsul, and that's, like, a whole story for another day too.
And that's why they're told as parables, yeah. I just want to say one other thing. I promise it'll be quick. Just because I found this lore really fascinating, but I encourage everyone to read more about it. But the goddess of flowers is basically confirmed to be a surviving Seelie. And that is because there's an Aranara quest chain. We didn't even get into the Aranara crap. There's this one part in that, epic quest chain, I call it the Odyssey, that that mentions that a Seelie survived and was friends with Rukkhadevata and Deshret. And we know that that is the goddess of flowers. And it also seems like, it talks about in her lore that she was exiled after, something like from the heavens. And we know that did happen to the Seelie race. And it also seems like she might have been lovers with King Deshret, and that she was sort of the key to giving him the forbidden knowledge, because he actually was sort of staging this whole rebellion and he wanted the forbidden knowledge. And something that she did actually unlocked that possibility for him. And then when she did that, she disappeared. I would encourage everyone to look more into that, because it's very fascinating.
I'd like to have an R episode because I think that there's just so much in there. It might be in our, it'll be our next season, but I think that there's so many little tidbits in there. And like you said, it is an odyssey. So it's very easy to get lost in some of those little bits and pieces. But they're really important, and they really kind of pull up a lot of questions, but they may be telling us more than we even realize.
Join us for our first 5-hour episode where we discuss.
We could have a whole goddamn season on this shit, my guys.
Poor Rana was in the longest coma of all time.
Oh my god,
She's still there, isn't she?
She's still there for some people who haven't finished it.
Yeah.
Oh. Outed.
I do think we got to stop now. Travelers, I want to thank you all so much for listening in today, and we'd love to hear more about what you think of Sumeru, what you think of some of these theories with Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, Lesser Lord Kusanali. There's a lot of shit going on. Do you agree that Tighnari was snubbed when he got electrocuted?
No.
Let me know. Shush, no one asked you. They asked the other travelers.
We are the other travelers.
No, you are my hosts. Could let us know by sending us an email, talesoftevatpod@gmail.com, by messaging us on Instagram, talesoftevatpod, or by messaging us on Twitter, talesoftevat. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we'd love to know what topics you'd like to see in the future. Otherwise, travelers, safe journeys. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Dendro nerds.